we will open the Master Plan Implementation Committee meeting at 7:43. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes. Did everyone get a chance to review the minutes?
Yes, I did.
Any corrections or additions to the minutes? Nope. Okay, what's the date of those minutes? Let's see. April 8th. So I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of the April 8th meeting.
So moved. Well, second.
Okay, we'll have to do a roll call vote. Regina?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Tabor?
Yes.
And myself, Cheryl, the chair, yes. Okay, we're going to go to item 3 on the agenda. We'll come back to item 2. Since we have Chris Hodlin of the Library Trustees with us. Chris, welcome. This agenda item is due to the sort of timeliness of when a date could be available for a public forum that we talked about holding with the Chris, you're muted.
That's right. I was talking to my husband to tell him I couldn't hear you guys. So
okay, no problem. The idea that we had about having a public forum and knowing that summer is not the best time to solicit public feedback when school is out and people are on their way for vacation and summer plans. And so we wanted just to talk about setting this date. So Chris, if you want to chime in and add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we met with the select board, which I think you probably already talked about at the last meeting. And they were all endorsing that we should try to move forward and, see where we go from what we've gotten so far. So we just felt that a public forum would be a good thing to start to get, the public aware of what we've already done. And, just to start get some of their feedback on what the plan is, or, I've already gotten questions, and I think one of the committees is already asking about pervious and impervious space in the building. I'm like, we don't have a building, we don't have anything yet. So I just thought it would be helpful to just make the public aware of what we're doing. Really, that's the only reason for it at this point. So.
And you wanted that to be a joint meeting with the library and the MPIC, right?
Yes.
The trustees did. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we were thinking that, we did a presentation to the select board. I don't know if you guys all saw that PowerPoint, but it was just, it didn't last more than 10 or 15 minutes, but it was, giving them a little background on the work that we've been trying to do to get parking. And Will talked about the parking needs that we have, and Cheryl went through, what you guys have all done so far on the MPIC. So, and then went through that, presented also that design, and where we were with that. So, we thought maybe we'd do something similar. And also, I guess at your last meeting, there were some questions that arose about church parking, and also like number of programs per spaces. So I've spoken to both of the churches and have actually an official response from them on what they could possibly provide, which honestly is very small, but could help us in a situation once in a while. But I was looking to update everyone with that. And then also Will and I went through the programs per parking spot, and it's, you really can't say add one more parking spot and you're going to get, a 20th of a program. It didn't really make sense, but we thought we might, add that as well as just another piece to that meeting and update. So
did you want to have the May 13th meeting is our next MPIC regularly scheduled meeting. Did you want to give us an update at that meeting on that information that since we don't have that on our agenda tonight?
Sure. Yep. I can put together. That's our library trustee meeting again. You guys always meet our meeting. So I have to miss my meeting to come to yours, so I'll put together the slides. Just, it's not a lot. And you let me know if you need me to come here to present it. I think if I write it up the way we had it, I think it would be, you could just ask any questions if you had, so.
Okay. So
You're-
if we had any, we could put you on first and then, but the idea is that you would include it in an updated slide to the deck that went to the, that we used at the select board meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, and again, the dates that the library is, has space available, the room is available for this purpose.
So the one date that we had identified was June 6th. So I think we were trying to wait until after town meeting, just because it didn't make any sense with the election and everything that was going on, to try to schedule another time for the public to try to participate. So, and there's some other dates that the library is booked and dates when either Cheryl's not available or Will. So we did propose June 6th. The library is open on that date, and Will is holding it open. If that would be a date that would work. We thought at least it would be before school gets out, and hopefully get some attendance to that meeting, so.
Okay, so questions or thoughts about that? Tabor, Dick, or Regina?
I can't make June 6th, but other than that,
Okay.
I think I applaud the idea. It's a good idea to do it this way, but
Okay. Regina?
Let's see, I'm checking my schedule right now.
Okay.
Yep, June 6th looks like it'll work.
Okay. And how about you, Dick?
Right, right now, I might have to check a few things. I may have a conflict, but I think I can certainly work around that. But in
Okay.
addition, I do have a question.
Sure.
If we come to a closure on, are there any spots available on a regular basis at Town Hall or that area?
Well, we're still
around Town
waiting
Hall?
for that construction to finish, Dick. It's not, if you've been up there recently, you know that they're working on the old building, the
Right.
renovation of that. So my understanding was that we were waiting for that construction work to be completed because there's still construction worker parking up there right now.
Right, but I mean, when that's finished, do we have some sort of an idea how many spots may be available?
Well, we're gonna have to do that utilization analysis again, and who's going to do that? We haven't identified yet. I think Roxanne was going to look into that. She was going to reach out to Chase Berkeley at DPW. I haven't heard back about that.
Okay, but I think that's going to be important as we come down to, to figure out some sort of a mix, or if there is going to be a mix. It sounds like Ms. Holdland has spoken to the churches. I think we're the only other variable, I guess, that could provide. The town is the only other space that we possibly could find spaces. And I think we'd have to know that. I think it'll be a question that will come up at some point. So I think we need a definitive answer one way or another.
Dick, I agree with you. I do think that last meeting we came to the conclusion that there's not going to be 20 spots available at Town Hall, right?
Right.
right.
So we're talking about the handful from the churches and maybe, 4 to 6 from Town Hall. I don't know, but certainly nowhere near the amount that the library is seeking to add. So I think even if we do find that there are some spots available, it still doesn't discount the utter need that the library is expressing, right?
No, Regina, I agree. I'm not questioning the need. I'm questioning the number of spaces at $80,000 a space. I'm just trying to figure out if the library needs a number of X, what else could be provided besides the additional spaces that would be provided to the library itself, right?
You're trying to get that as
What?
low as possible, Dick, in terms of how much the cost would be for how many new spots it would be.
What's that?
I'm sorry, were you trying to get it such that we could minimize the number of new spots necessary due to
Oh,
the cost?
not necessarily, but what I am trying to get at is that, before you usually ask someone to provide some funding, which they're going to need to provide these spaces. The one of the questions I would ask is, are there any other spaces available to reduce the number to come up with a number that they need without building new spaces?
Yeah, so I think we all agreed on that. I'm going to just try and be a little mindful of the specific agenda item here tonight is just like setting this date because we can talk about this when
That's fine.
at our next meeting on the 13th where we can get a more full update. I just don't want to, venture too far off the agenda there.
Yeah, I don't want. I didn't need an answer. I was just raising.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks, Dick. Okay, so I would say I don't recall what Elaine's availability is, but I think we move forward with the 6th because we don't really have other options. So let's put that on our calendars and we'll see how many of us that we can get. And I'll see if if Tim is available for that date as well. I don't know, and maybe when he comes back, well, again, it's not on the agenda, but I know at one planning board meeting recently, he said that he was interviewing assistant planner or assistant director candidates, to replace Josh, but I haven't heard that there's anybody has been selected yet. So that would be to help us staff our committee. But I'll see if Tim's available on the 6th. Chris, so that would be live in the Keys room, right?
Right.
So do you want to, I know that you do an email, the library, I should say, does an email blast, and you would be putting this in that blast. I'm just thinking how we get the word out to folks about the meeting, about the forum.
Yep. No, we would definitely put it out there. I mean, we send out a weekly. And then there's also a monthly, what programs or things are coming up in the next month.
Okay.
Usually goes out a week or two before the end of the month. So we could take care of that. We could put it in the Milton scene and we could see if we can get it into the papers as well.
And do you mind just asking, I don't know where the request goes, if it's to Nick or to Tim, but to put it in the town's email blast. I think
Yep.
Would you mind following up on that since you're gonna do some? Okay.
Because we'll see Nick regularly at town hall. So
Right. Okay. And we can make note of again on the 13th if anyone is tuning in or watches our meeting later that's going to happen on June 6th. Oh, at what time? At 6:30 or at 7?
I don't think we set a time, so
Okay.
I don't know. I'd say 6:30 or 7 is probably.
Is there a preference amongst those of us who are available on the 6th?
I'd prefer 6:30 or 7.
Okay.
Either one is fine. I just can't do
Either
6.
Right. Okay. All right. So either one is fine with me, Chris. So I guess we can leave it to you folks to tell us what you think is the best time.
And
All right.
Cheryl, I did look at the notes, the emails from Elaine, and she didn't comment on the June 6th date.
She did not. Okay. Thank you. And do you have Roxanne's? Did she comment on that date?
Let me check. I didn't see that
Okay.
one.
Thank you.
And I know in the past when we've had some of the meetings there, they've been taped. I don't know if it's possible to get it recorded or, get Milton Access TV to come. So I can check with that.
Okay. That would be great.
Yeah, I can see that meeting drawing a lot of interest after the fact, hearing about it, and I should have been able to attend. And it's nice to be able to send a link to say, look at it. And
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things is that will come from this meeting is understanding, and we can talk about this again, like I said, on the 13th, but that update on what the additional parking will bring to the library. I mean, I think that's obviously what folks will have an interest in, and then we'll get feedback on whether folks think that there's an interest in any other use for the property as well, whether it be cafe or some other use above the parking. So we can gauge the interest there. All right. Well, Regina, did you happen to find that?
I didn't
Roxanne?
see a response from Roxanne in the last thread.
Okay. All right. So, Chris, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. And we'll look for your notes before our next meeting on the 13th.
All right, thank you. Yeah,
Okay. Good night.
bye-bye.
All right. So now we'll go back to number 2. And the reason I think you all recall that we called this meeting was to talk about this before town meeting, this local historic district warrant article. I went through it with a pretty careful eye and looked at the report. I think that the article could use some more work. So I will give you my reasons for that if you like, but I open it up to others to give your thoughts as well.
It looked like closer to a first draft to me. I mean, a lot of things aren't consistent. Just the designation of the commission members, and it wasn't clear, even though it says above there are 7 members. It says that 1 member from 2 nominees solicited from the historical commission, 2 property owners from within each of the district areas. So 2 property owners from within each of the district areas. It doesn't specify which district areas, how many areas are in the district. And does that mean there's just, I mean, I assume that the intent was to say 2, but it doesn't say that. And so it sounds like it's leaving the room for, other district areas, which would be 2 more.
Yeah, in that same paragraph, it says 1 realtor and 1 architect, 1 attorney. But it doesn't say that those people should be residents of Milton, actually. And obviously,
Right.
You could get an AIA architect from. I mean, maybe it's implied, but it shouldn't be implied. It should be, pretty.
Well, it could start off with
explicit,
just
right?
all commission members shall be Milton residents or something.
Well,
like
then, though, there's commercial property owners should have an opportunity. They may not live in Milton.
Oh, that's a good point. Right. Yeah.
Because most of this is, property. I imagine people do, but like extra space storage, for example, is a company that owns that, and
They might
probably
designate their manager or something like
exactly,
that.
yeah. So I thought about that too, and then as I thought about it, I thought that made sense not to put it as a sort of at the top. I also was thinking that it's not the definition of structure. I'm sorry, Tabor, go ahead. You were speaking.
Well,
on
it
this.
just mentions the 1 realtor, 1 architect from the AIA, and 1 attorney. And I don't know much about the AIA and what other designations there might be out there for architects, but 1 attorney, does that mean that have they been admitted to the bar? Are they practicing? Are they? I mean, or did they just go to law school? And I know I've worked with a lot of people who went to law school, but that don't practice as attorneys, and they still call themselves an attorney. I don't know I'm not so sure of the definition of the word attorney.
Yeah, I don't know that either. I can answer about the AIA. It's a voluntary membership organization, but it is one in which it's common. Like I served when I lived in Boston on a landmarks district as a representative that was selected from an AIA call. So what they would do is they would put out a call through the Boston Society of Architects to any members who were living in Milton. As an alternative, you could say just a licensed architect, but then you would have to find them, like through maybe a newspaper ad or something. Regina, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
I was also curious if it matters what type of lawyer, like, are there any that would not be at all helpful in, like, that their experience wouldn't be any better than someone else? I don't know.
Well, I guess this is some model language. It would be interesting to see if others have tailored that definition any further. So I guess if we're going to give some feedback, that would be feedback here. Each of the districts is the other.
The issue about being a realtor also, it implies that it's residential real estate.
Yeah, instead of a broker like
But we're
you.
talking about, a significant portion of this is being commercial, and most commercial brokers are not realtors.
All right, so that's a good point too. The broker should be included in terms of.
And maybe it's just one real estate agent, one architect, and one attorney that are, maybe there's some sort of catch-all phrase that we could use that appropriate for historical commissions. There are plenty of attorneys, architects, and real estate brokers that probably wouldn't be. But I'm just thinking that makes some sense to designate that this is really, we're looking for somebody who's going to be oriented toward a historical commission. I don't know how much we want to tie everybody's hands about it anyway, because they're going to be appointed, right?
Yeah, it's like to give guidance, right? That comes again from the Mass Historical Commission. This kind of composition of who would be on it. But I think the commercial broker is a good call, and whether it makes sense to say, an architect, a realtor, broker, architect, attorney with, some appropriate real estate or historic district experience. I mean, you could just kind of put it in a little couched a bit, right? But we're not going to rewrite it for them, but I think we just want to give them some feedback. Hi, Tim. We had a little late start, so we did already discuss the library trustee meeting. I'll get back to you on that. And then right now we're talking about the Historic District Commission or Historic District, and kind of, I think seemingly coming to agreement, we think it's not ready yet for, I like the idea of a district. I just don't think this article is quite there yet myself.
Hey, Cheryl, I had another question about like a conflict of interest. Like if the broker or commercial property owner had their own attorney apply to be on the historic district. I mean, I just don't know what, if any, language there is to prevent that. Because
the state already provides for that with when you are
conflict of interest forms.
Conflict of interest law. So I mean, one would think that should be covered, but I don't know.
That should certainly be covered when it gets up for appointment, right? It should be
covered all the way along, so that
right.
Even after you've been appointed, now you get hired and you're on the commission. This should be, you're obligated to reveal that. I mean, I've run into it regularly, on all the boards I sit on, and it's something that you just have to be upfront and honest about it, because you can't predict the future.
Right. Well, whoever would be selected for this would have to go through the conflict of interest training, right? Like we all do. Excuse me. I also had the definition of structure and the boundaries of this district. It would encompass the wharf and wharf park, and so definition of structure, would the docks be a structure? Would the any kind of, if there were improvements made at the park, a gazebo or something, would all of that come? So I think there could be some better or some clearer language around like that kind of structure. Even if it were historical signage. I just also didn't feel as if there was any distinction made between just the history of this location and the actual structures themselves, because what you're restricting is the structures themselves. And you're to me, these buildings don't have equal historic value in terms of their architecture. So if I look at, for example, the Masonic building and the building next to it, which houses the Citizens Bank, those are not called out separately. So one's got a lot of historic architectural character and one doesn't, but they're not treated differently here. So
they're both historic structures, though.
They're all considered historic, even if they were built in 1970 or they've been altered beyond anything. I mean, I've run into this in my own career is that, something's considered a historic structure if it's got, one piece of timber left and one granite stone at the foundation and everything else has been replaced over the years. To me, that's not what we're trying to do here. And then also, there's things here where this commission can adopt design guidelines at some point, just through a public meeting hearing, but no other process. The planning board went through a pretty detailed process in developing design guidelines for the overlay district. So how would these guidelines in the historic district coexist with the guidelines in the overlay district? It's not clear to me. So if there's a conflict, it seems like there would be some back and forth between the two. So it seems to me they need a report, really an architectural report on which are the significant buildings? What are the character defining features of those buildings? What are the architectural features? So that way you're guiding somebody in the future who's on this commission, what's important. So that's my thought about it.
Yeah, I was taken aback a little bit just because it feels, when I read this first and then I read the warrant committee's comment, their first comment was, this seems like a deal killer for, promoting development of that district. And it seems like it's implying that there's a lot of regulation. And then they go on to say that, well, actually all these things are excluded, which I guess is good, but it looks like it was pulled out of, very large regulation, which I'm guessing because this is done by Mass Historical, it probably was. And
I mean, to get one of these districts, you have to follow their process.
Right.
And you start with their model bylaw and they have to approve the bylaw. So
Right.
It is not something that you start from scratch on. It seemed to me like one of the things that the warrant committee was concerned about was the fines. I didn't focus on the fines. I really was more focused on what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to prevent development. We're trying to protect from really historic buildings with historic significance from being altered beyond recognition or being torn down. I mean, that's the way I have viewed this historic district. We're not trying to make it a district that you can't touch and it doesn't evolve. It's evolved over its history for many generations, right?
And some of those things, like the fines, I get it. I mean, for a long period of time, if you go back and say, you actually violated that for the last 200 days, and add it all up, it could be a significant amount of money. But you could also, as a authority, just point out to the building department, there's no occupancy permit granted, or there won't be another one granted unless you fix these things, and therefore the onus is still back on the developer. But at least you're not accruing fines at a crazy rate, and eventually they're going to have to clear up the title if they're going to try to sell this to an investor in the future. I
don't know what the remedy is if you're fined because you did something, you removed something that you needed permission to remove, and it can't be put back, right? So is the remedy to recreate it, or is the remedy to keep getting fined? I mean, it's like a little unclear to me.
But the Conservation Commission, often when they give permission, there's an order of conditions that you've got to fulfill. And I'll tell you this, I mean, in the real estate world, 50% of those orders of conditions are not fulfilled. And 20 years later, they're still not fulfilled. And when you go to sell the property, the bank will come in, or the closing attorney will say, "Hey, wait, this isn't kosher. You gotta go back and fix this." It's been hanging over their heads for 20 years and they never did it. It's obviously not great from a conservation standpoint, and the Conservation Commission that didn't find them, but it is one of those gotcha clauses, and that could be replaced here without actually any financial penalty, but it would at least, to a certain extent, imply that there's an importance to complying with this.
So I like the idea of you basically have a title problem at some point if you're out of compliance. And you do have opportunity to fix that the non-compliance, but you don't necessarily have to get fined daily for it, right? That's
And
what
some
you're
people
saying.
can't afford to do the
They-
work.
Yeah.
Or the economy goes south and somebody's out of work, and before you know, there's some residential houses in here and other things. You could end up with problems that people didn't think about, and now you're finding them, forever, and it just seems like you could just say, unless you correct it, it's like Title V. You don't have to do it until you sell the house, but even though you're pretty sure that the septic system is no longer any good, that's the kind of thing. It seems like it's important here to just help people out in order to get them to do the right thing instead of penalizing them for not being able to do the right thing.
Dick, do you have any thoughts about all this?
Oh, no, I sort of focused on the initial comments of the warrant committee. I'm a little concerned about weighing in too heavily on something that the warrant committee hasn't given their stamp of approval. And I think that the select board also took a look at this and passed on an opinion. Going back to, I think we have to think about what are we trying to accomplish here. At one point, we want to encourage development in our historic districts, but at the same time, we want to maintain the historic character. I like the concept. I just don't think it's a particularly well put together warrant for this meeting, and I think it should go back and be reworked. So
would you like for me to convey to Larry Loeffler that we're supportive of the idea of a district here, but that we think that this article is not ready yet? We think we have concerns about it, and we're not ready to endorse it as written.
That's been my feeling all along. I think that when Larry came in, he's a very passionate and very involved. Like a number of us, we get involved in these projects and they sort of take on a life of their own, and we just want it over with and let's get this thing passed. But I really don't think it's ready yet. And I think it could be something that with a little bit more attention, a little bit more work, it could get enthusiastic and almost unanimous support, but it's not here right now.
All right. So what do you think about we invite him into a meeting in the future, and we can share with him some of these concerns now that we have looked at it in more detail, and maybe they can take that. I mean, I don't support the warrant committee article for a no. I would support a refer for further study, because I don't think it should be shot down completely. Would you all agree with that, or do you have a different position?
I would agree with that.
As I would too. I mean, we've done this. This is fairly standard in this type of work that I can remember. We send it back for further study. We're not saying. I think it's a good concept. This just isn't the right warrant right now.
All right. So I'll convey that we would support sending it back for further study. We'd welcome him to come in and we'll share our concerns with him. All right. Sound good?
Yep.
Excellent.
All right. So since we're trying to keep this short, I'm trying to keep us moving. Now we have Tim, and Tim, do you want to give us an overview of item 4 on our agenda, this economic development planning grant and so forth?
Yeah, thank you. So I sent an email, was it Friday or Thursday? I forget when. This is an initiative that the town administrator has been pursuing. We got an earmark in, I believe it was the fiscal 23 or fiscal 24 state budget to do economic development work in the town, which in kind of budget earmark terms is a very broad kind of, you can think of a ton of different things you can do. Given the fact that, via a lot of the work that the planning board is already doing, with the Milton Village zoning, with the East Milton zoning, with the MBTA communities zoning process, through all the 40Bs that we've had, there's been a lot of talk about housing, both kind of producing housing, zoning for mixed use, other ways of kind of fostering a more dynamic and vibrant economy in the town. There's been less attention and kind of thought put into that. And so, the town administrator thought it'd be a good idea to kind of use some of those funds to do some kind of formal economic development planning to see, what's the state of our current business districts, what's the state of our current, job base. I mean, Milton is obviously a primarily residential town, but we do have business districts. We do have, businesses, people work in Milton. Are there opportunities to expand that economy, not just, physically in a kind of land use sense, but are there other policies that the town could be, pursuing to, again, foster a kind of a more dynamic, economy. Obviously, the budget is always a concern, I think, every year around town meeting, but especially when we're talking, overrides, whether it's last year, this year, or next year. The idea of expanding the town's commercial tax base is always something that comes up, as a means of, gaining revenue for the town. So we solicited a proposal from MAPC, which does this kind of work with, municipalities throughout the region. And we got the proposal, that you had in your inboxes. One of the elements of these proposals, which is common to every kind of planning effort that we do, is having a public board to be kind of a touchstone for for our consultant to be able to, kick things off, figure out what the priorities are, get some direction, and do, periodic reporting back. Because this is, it's an economic development planning, proposal, so there is a planning component to it. But in terms of, who has, jurisdiction over the different outcomes, part of it's going to be planning board, part of it's going to be select board, part of it could be, another board or kind of department entirely. And so we thought just, because it is, a lot of these things that we're after are, there's already an economic development element to the master plan. That element will need to be, we'll talk about, do we need to update that? If and when we update the master plan, we thought that, the master plan implementation committee, at least being aware of and involved in this process, was a good idea. So we just wanted to put it on your radar. We had a planning board meeting. Cheryl, it feels like
Monday.
100 years. It feels like 100 years
Monday.
ago, 2 days ago. The planning board has expressed an interest in, in this plan as well. So, there's a possibility, and I might even say a probability that the planning board will be kind of the named board that is kind of the touch point for the consultant through this process. That being said, as the master plan implementation committee does its work to kind of evaluate, how the master plan has been implemented over the past 9.5 years, and also looking forward to how do we update the master plan in the future. I think kind of paying attention to being involved with this planning effort is probably going to be a good idea, because, this could be the type of thing where, rather than starting from scratch, maybe this plan kind of, functions as, that updated economic development element or parts of it or whatever. So again, we just wanted to put on your radar, gauge your interest in being involved. And also just kind of, again, keep you in the loop on these things, because it's, highly relevant to, a lot of the things that, you've been keeping an eye on through the master plan process. And again, as a sort of joint planning and select board, body, kind of a logical place to kind of convene and kind of discuss these issues. So that's where we are.
I just want to add to that Tim spoke to that at our meeting on Monday in reference to his staff update. Since it wasn't on the planning board's agenda, it's going to be on the agenda, I believe, Tim, on May 9th.
Yep.
So the board will have some discussion of it then, which will be before our meeting on the 13th. So if we want to convey any thoughts to the planning board, for their discussion on the 13th, we could do that via me or via Tim. If we see that, yes, we think it's appropriate for us to have some kind of involvement, we could convey that. So thoughts, anyone?
Tim, how does this grant interact with the work that Josh is already doing down in the overlay district down in East Mill, which is a central business district?
So it's not a grant per se, it's an earmark.
Okay.
So it's kind of state budget money that, will get released, when we have, a proposal to kind of give to the state. We'll say like, look, we're bringing on this consultant, give us the money. So in terms of how it interacts with what's going on at the wharf, I think that to the extent.
Not the wharf, East Milton Square.
Oh, Josh Fiala. I'm sorry. I thought you were
Yeah.
talking about our old friend Josh, who's doing great. I just texted with him earlier. Um, so I think so. It's good that these are both MAPC kind of projects, and the Angela Brown, who's the woman that is kind of the lead on this proposal, works right down the hall from Josh, and we've basically said to her like, look, we are kind of covering land use in East Milton effectively, through a very kind of robust, years long planning process. And so to the extent, that'll be something, that, again, if the planning board decides that they want to be, the board, I think that's direction that, we'll want the planning board to give to the consultant that like, there are other business districts that maybe we need to look at all of them holistically. We need to talk to people in town to see if there's an appetite for additional business districts, or at least locating businesses in different areas. But I think a lot of the work that and East Milton still needs to be a part of the picture, but I think a lot of the work that you would kind of, this plan is not a land use plan, it's not a zoning plan, it's not anything like that. Effectively, East Milton is kind of way ahead now of a lot of things when it comes to, what is the appetite for expanding the commercial district in East Milton? Well, we know that there's not a ton of appetite to do that. Through the Barrett process, which fed into this MAPC zoning process, we know that, we like the business district the way it is. What are the types of buildings that you'd want to see, and what types of businesses do you want to, zone for? We're talking about that in that East Milton process. So I think that this planning process will kind of borrow a lot from the East Milton process in terms of just kind of slotting in, the types of questions we're asking in East Milton, we're going to be asking on Central Ave, we're going to be asking on Granite Ave, we're going to be asking all over town. Those questions have already been answered in East Milton. So not that East Milton's going to sort of get short shrift in this, but I think because we've been doing so much work already, we've gotten a little bit of a head start over there, for these purposes.
Okay. All right.
Tim, I love how you said that it's not that East Milton is going to get short shrift. They've already gotten, right? And
Plenty of
and
shrift.
yeah, plenty of shrift, and I think plenty of traffic to go with it. So, I really honor the fact that we're paying attention to how different parts of town, different precincts, different what have you, can participate in this process and receive, services and development in, to honor the fact that they also pay taxes and help keep this place running. So thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I'm old enough to have been around when we zoned, the Ice House, which eventually became a 40B. But even, throughout both of those zoning and 40B processes, folks over on Blue Hills Parkway and kind of the neighborhood behind, the Ice House, were gaga over the idea of, can we get a shop?
I know you're basically pointing at my house when you say that.
Yeah. So I think there's always been kind of, an underlying kind of desire for this stuff, and, always kind of looking for opportunities to, engage those questions. And I think this is a really good one. I've been wanting to do planning over on the west side for a long time. 740Bs intervened, and then MBTA communities intervened. But this is an opportunity again to kind of, give people a forum to, state those, those preferences. Because I think it's one thing to kind of, complain that you've got to go into Hyde Park or Mattapan to get a cup of coffee or something. It's another thing to actually be able to have that feedback maybe lead to something. So, excited about that. But again, also, we've got these existing business districts that, we're one of the things that's, and I know you're trying to be short, but one of the things that I would actually recommend folks take a look at, you know, is a couple years ago, Governor Baker brought McKinsey in to do kind of like a future of work in the Commonwealth kind of report. And it's really shiny and flashy. But one of the things they said is that towns like Milton, Dedham, you know, Hingham, places where you're not downtown, but you have a downtown, are really poised potentially for success in a, you know, hybrid work from home economy because, you know, when you've got all these sort of downtown office workers that now don't have to go into the office or choose not to go into the office, they don't want to lose the action. And not to say that East Milton or Central Ave are, you know, downtown Boston, but you can grab a cup of coffee, you can grab a drink after work, you can get a haircut at lunch, you know, you can do that stuff. And so, you know, how is that? We've been through this for a couple of years now. What is that dynamic here in the town of Milton? How can we capitalize on that to kind of, you know, give our own residents the best community that they can get and also kind of leverage that you know, for the folks just listening in, that was the international sign for cash money that Regina was doing. So it's an exciting project, and I think you know, highly relevant to this committee's work. So you know, we're really looking forward to it.
Is there any reason to suspect that the state might not deliver this money to us because of our MBTA situation?
No. We've been so there is a little bit of a time crunch. We do need to kind of, you know, we're getting MAPC under contract. We've got a couple more weeks to do that. But that's only, you know, you know, this was like ARPA money that they need to get out the door. But there's no strings in that regard. We've been in touch with the folks at the state who are administering this program, you know, multiple times since the referendum, and this isn't something that they're holding up for that reason. So we're in the clear on that.
Good. Long overdue.
So
And
one
get
thing,
on the record and say that we're not West Milton. We are South Milton. Okay. South Milton.
I'm trying to make Upper Mills happen, but I
Don't
don't
get it
think it's gonna-
twisted.
if you look at a map, it does say Upper Mills. I don't know where it came from, but it's on maps, right? So one thing I noticed in the scope of work, Tim, was a number of, I think I counted maybe 5 or 6 touch points with a board or committee, and then a couple of community forums, but also some focus groups, I think it was called. And I was thinking that at a minimum, that the MPIC could be a focus group so that our participation could be sort of an organized participation. You know, if we're not going to be like the body, you know, that this lands with, then I do think I would advocate that we have some kind of organized participation. Do others agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think especially since we have the added membership for various goals, right? So we are a body that diversifies based on precinct, based on expertise. And you know, I don't see, you know, why it wouldn't be reasonable for us to be involved with someone else's permission, of course.
How long is this process expected to take, given that we've only got the 1 extra year of existence?
1 year.
Yeah, I think they're talking September to September.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dick, any thoughts?
No, I agree with them. I think we should be involved. I'd be interested to hear from the planning board as to what they think is a good involvement for our group to be, and how we could assist in the process. But yeah, I mean, it fits into the master plan, and there's no reason for us not to be involved.
Exactly. That my view as well. All right, so Tim and I can take that back to the planning board at our meeting on the 9th. And then we can provide an update on the 13th. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate
gang.
that.
Thanks a lot for the time. Good seeing everyone again.
Thank you, Tim.
Good luck.
All right, thanks. So that's our last agenda item, folks.
Okay.
As we said, 13th, kind of depends how town meeting goes. So I'll be in touch. If it looks like town meeting is going to end up having to go to the 13th, we'll have to reschedule, and we'll send out some alternate dates. But I don't think we'll know for at least probably the first couple of days of town meeting, which is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week.
Right.
All right. So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All right. So I'm keeping notes actually. This time Tabor, yeah, and
Yes.
Dick, all those in favor. Regina,
Hi.
Dick,
Yes.
Tabor,
Yes.
myself, the chair. Yes. Thanks, guys. Good night.